I honestly don't even know how to start this. It's been a roller coaster, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around everything. I guess I should give you some context before diving into what happened, because what I'm about to tell you is crazy. Crazy enough that I sometimes still wake up thinking I'm just in a bad dream. So, I'm Rowan. I run a tech security company, pretty successful, definitely not some startup trying to make it big. We've been in the game for years now. Got a team, some solid investors, and honestly, things were going well. I've got a nice life. A beautiful wife, Justine. And I know, every guy says that about their wife, but Justine was different. She was perfect, or at least that's how I thought. She's stunning, first off, and she had this way of making everyone feel like they were the most important person in the room. I loved how she'd show up at my company events, always dressed to the nines, charming the hell out of everyone. But underneath it all, she was smart. Very smart. We were a power couple, or at least I thought we were. She had a good job too, so we were both busy, but we made it work. But then, things started to feel off. It was small at first, like how she'd act kind of distant some evenings. Not the usual flirtatious, playful Justine I was used to. She'd stay up late on her phone, turning it face down when I walked into the room. Just little things, you know? I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe it was just stress from her job or something. But then came the financial stuff. Justine always handled the household finances, and I trusted her completely. But one evening, I noticed a strange transaction on our account. It was a huge sum of money, way more than we spend on anything, and I asked her about it. She just waved it off, said it was nothing, that I shouldn't worry about it. But the weird thing? She wasn't even trying to hide the look in her eyes when she said it. Like she thought I was too dumb to ask questions. That's when something inside me shifted. I told myself I wasn't going to let this go. I'm not a guy who's easily paranoid. But a few weeks after that, I found out some shady stuff was going on with the company. Little things that added up, odd discrepancies in our financial reports, and a few board members who suddenly started acting weird around me. I knew we had enemies, every successful business does, but this felt different. I started putting the pieces together. So yeah, my gut told me something was wrong. And I had no idea just how deep this would go. Alright, so after that weird transaction, I tried to shake it off. But the feeling lingered. I'm a busy guy, right? I've got meetings to run, clients to meet, and honestly, I didn't want to believe that something could be wrong in my marriage. But, the more I thought about it, the more I realized there were other things I had missed. The next big thing came when I was at a dinner party, just a casual gathering with some old friends from the industry. Justine had been acting strangely distant for a few weeks at this point. She was still her usual charming self, but there was a coldness underneath, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. She spent a lot of the evening talking to this one guy, Conrad, an old military contact of hers that I didn't really know. Now, I'm no fool. I noticed the way she was leaning in when he spoke, the way they'd exchange these weird, knowing looks that I didn't quite understand. Maybe I was being paranoid, but I didn't like the vibe. I decided to watch them from a distance. She didn't even try to hide it. When the night ended, I brought it up with her. I said, "Who's this Conrad guy? He seems close." She gave me this fake laugh, all airy and dismissive. "Oh, you know, just an old friend. He's harmless." But I knew her better than that. She didn't talk like that about anyone. There was something off about him, and now I was getting that same gnawing feeling in my stomach again, the one I felt when I saw that strange transaction. A few days later, I decided to do something I never thought I'd have to do. I hired a private investigator. It was something I joked about doing in the past when we'd laugh about the idea of spying on each other, but I was getting desperate. I needed answers. I don't even know how to describe the mix of emotions that ran through me when the investigator started turning up info. He found out Justine was meeting with Conrad multiple times in secret. But it didn't stop there. She was also in touch with someone named Travis, a shady investor who'd been trying to get his hands on my company for years. The guy had no business being in our circle, but Justine was regularly meeting him at odd hours, always without me. And the worst part? She had been funneling small amounts of company funds into accounts that I couldn't trace. I'm not exaggerating when I say I felt like my world was falling apart. It wasn't just about the money, it was the betrayal. I'd built this empire, and she was, she was involved in something that could tear it down. She didn't even tell me. At first, I wanted to confront her, but something inside me told me I needed to be smarter about this. I needed proof, real proof, not just a feeling in my gut. I had to find out exactly what she was planning. So I went deeper. I started keeping track of her movements, all while keeping up the act of the perfect husband. The lies were piling up, and I could feel them all pressing down on me. And then it hit me. Justine wasn't just having an affair. This was bigger than that. I was looking at a conspiracy, a plan to take me down, and she was right in the middle of it. The rage I felt, honestly, I can't even describe it. But I had to stay calm. I had to think this through. This wasn't just personal anymore. It was business. My business. And I wasn't about to let anyone, especially her, destroy what I'd built. So I got my legal advisor, Harriet, involved. Harriet's been with me from the start. She's sharp, methodical, and one of the only people I trusted completely. I couldn't do this alone. We started gathering everything, the financial transactions, the meetings, the irregularities at the company. And I knew I was going to need all of it to expose Justine for what she really was. I wasn't just going to let her walk away from this. Not after everything. No way. So, now things are getting real. Once Harriet was in the loop, everything started moving fast. I can't even describe the kind of weight that lifted off my chest, just knowing I wasn't in this alone. But it was also terrifying, because I knew what we were up against. Justine wasn't some amateur. She wasn't doing this on a whim, this was planned. The more Harriet and I dug, the more we realized how deep the conspiracy went. We started with Conrad and Travis, the two obvious players. Conrad's military background? That wasn't just a coincidence. Turns out, the guy had connections to a bunch of private security firms, some that were way off the books. I started seeing the connections. These weren't just meetings over drinks. They were strategic planning sessions, and they were using my own company's weaknesses against me. But there was more. The hacker, Mabel, she was the one pulling the strings on the tech side. Mabel was a ghost in the system. A former cybersecurity expert who had been kicked out of a few firms for her unconventional methods, which is code for illegal. I remember Harriet showing me a report on her. Mabel had worked with Travis before on some shady projects, and they had a history of trying to take down tech firms like mine. Mabel wasn't just some side character in this mess. She was infiltrating our networks, planting false data, and helping Justine cover her tracks. But here's the kicker. Justine wasn't just sabotaging my work life, she was messing with everything. I found out she was using personal information from my company's private files to blackmail some of our investors. One of them, an old friend of mine named Greg, was being pressured into selling his shares to Conrad at a ridiculously low price. He didn't even know who was behind it. Justine had been working through proxies. I couldn't believe it. My own wife was orchestrating a corporate coup behind my back, pulling all the strings with people I thought were friends, or at least, people I could trust. She was trying to steal my company, my legacy. Now let me tell you, when you find out something like that, it messes with your head. You start questioning everything. The years you spent together. The trust you built. I remember sitting there with Harriet, looking at the evidence, and it just felt like my whole world had flipped upside down. Everything about Justine was a lie. Harriet, who's usually so composed, even looked shaken. "Rowan," she said, "this isn't just about the company anymore. This is about your entire life. You need to prepare yourself." But here's the thing, I wasn't about to let her win. I wasn't going to roll over and let them destroy everything I worked for. No, I had to fight back. We kept digging. Harriet and I kept working in the shadows, pulling together the pieces. It was like watching a movie unravel before your eyes, except this was my life. My real life. But I had a plan. A good one. I was going to expose every last one of them, Justine, Conrad, Travis, and Mabel. I wasn't just going to expose them quietly though. No, I was going to do it big. I was going to make sure the whole damn board knew exactly what had been going on behind closed doors. And when the time came, I'd be ready. Ready to face my wife, the woman who had destroyed everything. Ready to show her for what she really was. I kept up the act at home for a while. I had to. If I showed any sign of suspicion, she'd have known. I'm not an idiot. She was too good at this game. But every time I looked at her, my stomach twisted. The woman I thought I knew, the one I built my life with, was slowly fading away. I couldn't even look at her without thinking about everything she'd been doing behind my back. One evening, she asked me if I wanted to go out to dinner, just the two of us. At first, I thought about blowing her off. But then something in me said no. Not yet. I needed to hear her side, even if I already knew what was coming. I agreed. So we went to this nice little Italian place, and the whole dinner felt off. Justine was playing the part, smiling, laughing at my jokes, being the perfect wife. But there was this tension. I could feel it between us, like an invisible wall. She kept checking her phone under the table, acting all casual, but I caught her glancing at it a few too many times. It made my skin crawl. Finally, I just couldn't take it anymore. "Is there anything you want to tell me?" I asked, trying to sound calm but failing miserably. My voice cracked, and I hated that it did, but it was hard to keep it together when everything I'd worked for, everything I thought was real, was crashing down around me. She blinked, looking surprised, but I could see the flicker of guilt in her eyes. Justine knew I knew something. She didn't know how I knew, but she knew I was onto her. "What are you talking about?" she said, pretending like it was no big deal. "You're acting weird tonight." I leaned forward, keeping my voice low. "I know about Conrad. And Travis. And Mabel." Her face went pale, and for just a second, I saw the mask slip. She recovered quickly though. "You're insane," she snapped, but there was no conviction behind it. It was all just a lie. "Why are you even bringing this up? You're being paranoid." I didn't flinch. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me again. "No, Justine. I'm not paranoid. I've been watching. I've been getting reports. I know everything." Her eyes narrowed. "You think you can control me? You think you have the right to control you?" I cut her off. "You've been running a goddamn campaign behind my back to steal everything I've worked for. You've been working with people who want to ruin my company. You've been lying to me. To everyone. And you're still trying to act innocent." The words were out before I could stop them, and in that moment, I could feel the weight of everything crashing down. It felt like the calm before a storm, and I knew that this wasn't just a conversation anymore. This was the beginning of something bigger. She stared at me, and for a second, I thought she was going to crack. But then she gave me this cold smile, like she'd won. Like I was the fool for even thinking I could catch her. "You really think you have it all figured out, don't you?" she said, her voice sharp. "You don't have a clue what's really going on, Rowan. You're just too small to see the bigger picture." Her words stung, but I wasn't about to let her get to me. Not anymore. I stood up, signaling the waiter for the check, my heart pounding in my chest. "I know enough to know that you're going to lose everything. This company? My company? It's not yours for the taking. And if you think you're going to walk away from this without consequences, you're wrong." She didn't say anything else. She just stared at me, her face twisted with a mixture of anger and disbelief. But I could see the panic in her eyes. She knew it was over. She just didn't want to admit it yet. The next few days were a blur of meetings with Harriet, reviewing documents, gathering the last of the evidence we needed to bring her down. We were getting close, but I could feel the pressure building. Justine wasn't going to let this go without a fight. I knew she'd start making her moves soon. She had to. She had too much to lose. And that's exactly what happened. She tried to go straight for the board. I got wind of it through one of the members I still trusted, Greg. She was trying to convince them that I was unfit to run the company, that I was losing my grip, that there was financial instability I wasn't seeing. She even had Travis and Conrad working behind the scenes, planting fake evidence to make it look like I was mismanaging funds. But what she didn't know, Harriet and I were already ahead of her. The moment she made her move, we countered. Every falsified report she submitted was already debunked. Every whisper she planted was already shut down with solid, irrefutable proof. It wasn't just a matter of protecting my company anymore. It was a matter of making sure she'd never have a chance to tear it apart. I wasn't going to let her ruin me. I wasn't going to let her win. So here's the thing about betrayal, it changes you. You think you know someone, trust them with everything, and then they pull the rug out from under you. It doesn't just hurt, it leaves you raw, like someone's taken a knife to your insides. And I'm not gonna lie, part of me wanted to just collapse. Part of me wanted to throw in the towel and say, fine. Take everything. You win. But that's not who I am. That's not who I've ever been. And I wasn't about to let some woman, my wife of all people, destroy everything I'd worked for. The boardroom was heating up. I could feel the tension crackling every time I walked into a meeting. I'd always been in control. Always. But now? Every time I looked at Justine, I knew she was trying to spin a web of lies. Every move she made felt like another attempt to ruin me, to twist everything around. But I was ready for her. So, Harriet and I took the gloves off. We dug up everything, every shady email, every false transaction, every piece of evidence that connected Justine to Conrad, Travis, and Mabel. There was nothing left to chance. We knew exactly what she was up to, and we were going to expose her, once and for all. But Justine? She wasn't sitting around feeling sorry for herself. She knew we were onto her. And she came out swinging. I got a call from Greg, one of the few remaining board members I trusted. Rowan, he said, Justine's pushing hard. She's got some dirt on you, man. Something about some supposed financial instability. You've got to be careful. I had to laugh. Financial instability? She was the one creating all of this mess. But I didn't let on that. I knew it was all lies. I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of seeing me sweat. By the time the board meeting came around, everything was in place. Harriet had arranged for a full audit of the company's books, every single transaction, every penny that had been moved or misused. And I'd gathered a few key people from the legal team who had been keeping a close eye on Justine's little operation. The moment the meeting started, I knew things were about to get interesting. Justine was sitting at the table, looking smug as ever. She wore that perfect, polished expression, like nothing was wrong. But I could see the cracks in her facade. I knew what she was doing behind the scenes, and I wasn't about to let her get away with it. I'd like to start by addressing some concerns that have been raised, Justine said, trying to sound calm, but I could tell there was a hint of anxiety in her voice. There have been some serious discrepancies in Rowan's handling of company funds. I think it's time we seriously reconsider his position as CEO. I could almost feel her smirk from across the table. It made my blood boil, but I kept my face neutral. I knew this was coming. She was trying to make me look weak. Trying to turn the board against me. But then, I did something she didn't expect. I leaned forward, and in my usual calm voice I said, "Before you make any more accusations, Justine, I think it's only fair we take a look at the facts." I nodded to Harriet. She pulled up a few files on the screen. I swear, the room went dead quiet when the evidence started flashing up. The false reports. The transfers of funds into accounts that weren't supposed to be there. And then I dropped the bomb, the hacker. Mabel's name appeared on the screen, connected to Justine's personal accounts. The emails. The messages. Everything. I watched Justine's face fall. Her confidence disappeared in an instant. She looked around the room, trying to salvage what little she could, but it was too late. The proof was right there in front of them. "You've been working with Conrad, Travis, and Mabel, haven't you?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. This whole thing was a scheme to steal my company from under me. I could see the panic in her eyes now. She didn't have anything left to say. She tried to stammer out an excuse, but it was no use. The truth was already out. But she wasn't done yet. Oh no, Justine wasn't about to let this slip away without a fight. "You can't do this, Rowan," she yelled, standing up and slamming her hands on the table. "You think you're in control here? You think you can just walk away with everything? You're a fool. You have no idea what's coming for you." It was almost like she'd snapped. But honestly, I didn't care. At this point, I was done with her. I'd seen enough. She wasn't the woman I married. She wasn't even the person I thought I knew. She was a liar, a thief, and a traitor, and I wasn't about to let her destroy me. "Enough," I said, raising my hand. "I'm done. It's over." The board had no choice but to act. They voted immediately, and with all the evidence on the table, Justine's fate was sealed. The vote was unanimous. She was out. I'd spent months building this company, years really, and I wasn't about to let her tear it down. It was mine, and now the truth was out. But even as I stood there, knowing I had won, I couldn't help but feel something else. It was like I was standing in front of a grave. Because in a way, I was. I had just buried the person I once loved. The woman I thought I knew, the one I thought was my partner in everything, was gone. And while I had won the battle for my company, I couldn't shake the feeling that, in some way, I had lost something far more important. But that wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of what was coming next. The next few days were a blur. I don't think I even fully processed everything that had just happened. One moment, Justine was sitting there at the board meeting, confident and smug as ever, trying to rip everything I built apart. The next moment, she was out. Fired. Discredited. It wasn't just the company that she lost, it was everything. Her reputation. Her future. All of it shattered in front of her. But that wasn't even the worst part for me. The worst part was what happened after. When the dust settled, I thought things would calm down, that maybe I could breathe for the first time in months. But it didn't work like that. The reality of what Justine had done to me started to sink in, and it wasn't pretty. The first thing I had to deal with was the media. The moment her name hit the news, everything exploded. It felt like every reporter in the country wanted to talk to me. Some of them were just doing their job, but most of them were out for blood. They didn't care about the details. They didn't care that I'd been betrayed by my wife. All they cared about was the scandal. The rich CEO whose wife tried to steal his empire. I don't even know how many interviews I had to sit through. People speculated about my marriage, about why Justine did it. They wanted the dirty details, the emotional mess. They wanted me to break down on camera. I wasn't going to give them that, though. I stayed composed, as best as I could, and kept things professional. But deep down, it felt like they were picking at the raw edges of my soul, and I was struggling to hold everything together. Then, there were the legal battles. Justine wasn't going down without a fight. The moment she was ousted from the company, she started looking for a way to turn the tables. She filed lawsuits, tried to spin the story so she was the victim. She had hired one of the most aggressive lawyers in the country, Mason Wolfe, a guy with a reputation for winning any case, no matter the cost. I could see what she was doing. She wasn't just trying to ruin me professionally, she was trying to hurt me personally. But Harriet, she was my rock through all of this. She kept me grounded. We built our case against Justine carefully, meticulously, piece by piece. Every shred of evidence we had on her, every email, every conversation with Conrad, every piece of fraudulent paperwork, was a weapon. And when we presented it in court, I could see the fear in Justine's eyes. She was losing. She was losing everything. But even then, I couldn't stop thinking about the personal betrayal. The feeling of being stabbed in the back by someone who had once been the love of my life. I remember one night, right after a particularly brutal round of interviews, I walked into my apartment and just collapsed onto the couch. I hadn't slept in days. My mind was racing. My heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. For the first time in months, I let myself break down. Not in front of anyone, but alone in the silence of my apartment. I couldn't believe I had spent years building a life with someone who was always planning behind my back. Who was willing to destroy everything just for money and power. And that's when I got a call from Greg, one of the last few people I trusted on the board. He told me that the company was in the clear now, that the stock prices had stabilized, that the investors were backing me 100%. It was a relief, but it didn't feel like a victory anymore. It felt empty. "Rowan, you've done it," Greg said. "You've protected your legacy. You've saved the company." But all I could think about was the cost. What had I really saved? A company? Sure. But at what price? As the days went on, the media attention died down, the lawsuits started to settle, and the company began to recover. But the hole Justine left in my life wasn't so easy to fix. And honestly, I didn't know how to fill it. Even though I was surrounded by people who supported me, Harriet, Greg, the legal team, there was a part of me that felt hollow. I was still dealing with the emotional fallout. I still missed the person I thought she was, even though I knew I had no business missing her. She had betrayed me in ways I couldn't even fully comprehend. It wasn't just about the business anymore. It was about the loss. The life we built together, the future I thought we would have. All gone. But there was something that kept me going, something I couldn't ignore. The company. The vision I had for it. It wasn't just mine anymore, it was a part of me. And I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. The fight wasn't over. I had to keep moving forward, even if it meant dealing with this mess every day. Because in the end, the company was still standing, and I was still in control. And if I had to rebuild everything from the ground up, I would. But I'd never forget what happened. The betrayal. The heartbreak. The way she looked at me in that boardroom like I was the enemy. Justine had taken everything. But I was going to make sure I never lost myself in the process. The dust had settled. Justine was gone, and so were her people, Conrad, Travis, Mabel. The board was finally in my corner, and the company was starting to stabilize. But I couldn't ignore the emptiness that hung over me. I'd fought for my company, sure. But what about the wreckage she left behind in my life? I wasn't prepared for how much I'd have to fight on the personal side. The business world? That was my territory. But dealing with my own heartbreak? That was a whole different monster. Harriet was incredible through it all. She helped me keep focused on the legal side of things. We were still handling the fallout, responding to the occasional lawsuit Justine threw my way, but I'd made it clear, I wasn't backing down. I wasn't giving up what was mine. I wouldn't let her win. I spent a few weeks just trying to get back into the swing of things, focusing on the company, making sure it wasn't just surviving, it was thriving again. But no matter how much I threw myself into the work, I couldn't shake the feeling of being hollow, empty. It was one night, after a long meeting, that I finally admitted it to myself. I missed her. I hated myself for it, but I did. I missed the woman who used to walk through the door and make everything feel right. The one who laughed at my jokes, the one who stood by me when things were tough. It wasn't the Justine who had betrayed me, but the woman I thought she was. I guess that's the hardest part, right? Realizing the person you trusted the most, your partner, your closest ally, had been plotting behind your back the entire time. But I had to let go. Slowly, it started to sink in. She wasn't the same woman I married. She was someone else entirely, someone who was willing to throw everything away for her own gain. So, I kept moving forward. I focused on the company. I surrounded myself with people who were loyal, people who cared. And slowly, the pain started to fade. I started to feel like myself again, just a little. In a way, it felt like I was rebuilding, not just the company, but my entire life. One step at a time. And though the scars would never go away, I'd learned something important from this whole mess. I could survive. I could rebuild. Justine might have tried to destroy me, but in the end, I was still standing. And that meant something. It's been a few months now since everything came crashing down. Justine's out of the picture, her schemes exposed, and the company is on track to do better than ever. On paper, I should feel like I've won. And I guess in some ways, I have. But there's still this undercurrent of tension that I can't shake. Like I'm just waiting for the next shoe to drop. There are days where I'll be sitting in a meeting or working on a project, and suddenly, I'll feel that familiar ache in my chest. The one that reminds me of how everything was before I found out that my wife, the woman I trusted most, was ready to destroy everything I'd worked for. I think I've come to realize that you don't just lose your partner in a betrayal like this. You lose your idea of them too. The version of them you carried around in your mind. That hurts in ways I wasn't prepared for. I've been focusing a lot on myself lately. I took some time to do things I didn't have time for before. I spent more time with friends, real friends, like Greg, the one board member who stood by me. We've been talking more, doing things outside of work. I even started going to the gym again. I used to be so wrapped up in work that I let my personal life slip, but it feels good to take back some control. The company's been running smoothly, which is a relief. We've had a few new partnerships, and the new hires have been fantastic. It's like a fresh start. But there's always this little nagging feeling that I can't quite shake. I'm not sure if it's the trauma or just the feeling of being blindsided, but sometimes I still catch myself looking over my shoulder, waiting for something to go wrong. It's not paranoia, it's just this constant quiet worry that maybe somehow I missed something. Maybe there's still a piece of the puzzle I haven't uncovered. But, on the flip side, I'm realizing how much I've grown through all of this. I'm stronger, more aware of who I can trust, and more focused than ever on what really matters. And the weird thing is, I'm not angry anymore. At least not in the way I was when I first found out. Sure, I'll never forget what Justine did, but I've come to terms with it. There's no point in holding on to that rage, It won't bring me peace. The hardest part? Accepting that I'm not the same person I was before all this. I'm not as naive. I don't wear my heart on my sleeve anymore. I can't afford to. But maybe that's okay. Maybe I needed this wake-up call to remind me that I'm the one who holds the power over my life. And as for Justine, I haven't heard from her much since the court cases wrapped up. A few legal threats here and there, but nothing serious. She's still trying to keep her public image intact, but it's not working. People know who she is now. Some days, I feel a sense of closure, but other days, I'm still trying to figure out how to move forward. It's a process. But I'm doing it, little by little. The company is on track to hit new milestones, and that's what I'm focusing on now. My future. It's funny though. I thought I'd feel differently about all of this by now. I thought once Justine was out of my life, I'd feel free. And in a way, I do. But there's still that lingering ache, that reminder that betrayal changes you. It's not something you just get over. But at the end of the day, I'm still here. I'm still standing. And that means something. That means I'm not broken, even if I've been bent. And that's the most important thing I've learned through all of this. So yeah, the road to recovery is long. But I'm on it. And I'm not stopping. It's funny, you know. You think you're over something, and then one random moment hits you, and you realize, nope, not quite yet. I was sitting in my office last week, just wrapping up a big project with the team, when something hit me. It wasn't anything major, just a stupid little detail. But it stopped me dead in my tracks. We were working through some old files, and I came across a photo, one of those old family photos from a holiday trip Justine and I took years ago. She was smiling, holding my arm, looking so innocent. The person I thought I knew. The person I thought would always be there. For a second, it felt like I was drowning. Like the past hit me full force. And I hated myself for it. Why am I still letting this get to me? Why do I still miss the idea of her? I thought I had moved on. But in that moment, it felt like the betrayal had just happened all over again. I had to force myself to shake it off. It's stupid, I know. I've been through the worst of it. I've rebuilt everything. But man, does it still sting sometimes. The reality is, I don't know if I'll ever fully get over the damage Justine did. Not just to the company, but to me. To my trust in people. But I'm starting to accept that maybe that's okay. Maybe it's okay to feel bruised, as long as I'm not letting it define me. Work's been a great distraction. My team is amazing, focused, loyal, and driven. And I've been focused on creating a culture that's the complete opposite of what I had with Justine. No more backstabbing. No more hidden agendas. Full transparency. It's been empowering to see that vision start to take root. And, honestly, it feels like my purpose is clearer than ever. But here's the thing. I've realized I need to start thinking about my personal life too. I'm not saying I'm ready to dive into anything serious right now. But I can't keep using work as my only anchor. I'm still figuring out how to trust again, how to let someone in without the constant fear of betrayal hanging over me. It's a process. But I think I'm getting there. I had dinner with Greg the other night, just a casual catch-up. And man, it felt good to talk about life outside of the company. We got into some deep stuff. Relationships, mistakes, regrets. He asked me if I thought I'd ever get married again, and I paused before answering. I told him I wasn't sure. The idea of it terrified me. Take your time, he said. You've been through hell. But don't shut yourself off from what's out there, Rowan. Don't let her win that way. It stuck with me. Because that's what I've been doing for the last few months, shutting myself off. And it's not healthy. I don't want to keep looking back at Justine's betrayal as the defining chapter of my life. I'm not just the guy who got screwed over by his wife. I'm Rowan, the CEO who got knocked down, but got back up. And, in a way, that's something I can be proud of. So, I don't know what's next. I don't know if I'll ever fully let my guard down again, but I do know this. I'm not going to let the past dictate my future. I've got too much to offer, too much left to build. And maybe, just maybe, I'll figure out how to trust again. When the time's right. When I'm ready. Until then, I've got a company to lead, a life to rebuild, and a new chapter to write. And that's enough for now. A lot's happened since I last wrote. I keep thinking I'm done processing everything, done with the fallout, done with the emotions that still seem to creep up when I least expect them. But, as it turns out, healing isn't a linear process. It's more like a damn roller coaster. Up one minute, down the next. And right now, I'm somewhere in the middle, just trying to stay grounded. Work's going well. The company's still growing, and I'm starting to feel like the leader I used to be. Honestly, I needed that stability. It was like a lifeline when I was drowning in everything else. My team respects me. The investors are back on board. We're hitting milestones, and I'm starting to trust myself again in the boardroom. But there's this one piece of my life I can't ignore anymore, the part that's about me. I've been trying to figure out how to live again, without looking over my shoulder or second-guessing everyone I meet. It's tough, man. You'd think I'd be able to just move on after all this, but trust doesn't come back overnight. And, to be honest, I think that's what bothers me the most. The idea that I'll never be able to trust like I did before. That fear, that hesitation, it sticks with you. I'm learning, though. Slowly. There's a woman I've been seeing recently. Her name's Sarah. We met through a mutual friend at an event a few months ago. She's smart, easy to talk to, and most importantly, she doesn't try to push me too fast. We've been taking things slow, and it's honestly been kind of nice to just be with someone without the pressure of jumping into anything serious. But man, I can feel myself holding back. I catch myself sometimes, making excuses to avoid deeper conversations, or second-guessing the simple gestures like when she touches my arm or asks about my day. It's not her fault. She's great. But I can't shake the feeling that I'm still waiting for the rug to be pulled out from under me again. The fear's there, like a shadow, and it's hard to ignore. I told her about Justine. I didn't get into the details, I didn't need to, but I told her I've been through a lot, that trust isn't easy for me right now. She understood. She didn't push me, and that meant the world. For the first time in a while, I felt like I could breathe around someone. Like maybe, just maybe, there's a chance for me to heal in a way that isn't just about work or keeping up appearances. But every time I start to open up, a little part of me holds back. I don't know if that's just the scars from everything that happened, or if it's just me being afraid to give someone that much power over me again. I don't think it's the worst thing. I'm not rushing into anything. But I'm also not shutting myself off completely. I want to try, even if it's scary as hell. And maybe that's the biggest thing I've learned over the past few months, letting myself try. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe Sarah will be a part of it, maybe she won't. But I know I'm in a better place than I was when Justine first pulled the rug out from under me. I'm in control again. I'm not broken. And I don't have to do this alone. There are days when I still miss the version of her I thought I had, my wife, my partner, but I'm slowly accepting that that person never really existed. What I had with Justine was built on lies, and I can't keep mourning something that was never real. The company's mine. My life is mine. And while I'm still figuring out what comes next in the personal department, I know one thing for sure, I'm not going to let what happened define me. Not anymore. I'm moving forward, one day at a time. And that's enough, for now. It's been almost a year since Justine was removed from the company, and honestly, things are still evolving. There are days when I feel like everything has fallen into place, when I catch myself smiling for the first time in weeks, or when I take a breath and realize the weight on my shoulders isn't quite so heavy anymore. But there are still those moments, like when I'm driving alone or late at night when the world's quiet, that I think about her, about everything we went through, and about how my whole world was turned upside down. It's crazy how a year can pass and you still find yourself haunted by the ghost of the life you thought you had. I've learned a lot this past year. Some of it was easy to accept, how to trust again, how to lead with a clearer head, how to rebuild my sense of self. But a lot of it was harder. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal, they're still there, tucked away in parts of me I'm still learning to understand. The weird thing? I think that's okay. There's no perfect way to heal from something like this. No timeline. I can't just wave a magic wand and pretend the scars aren't there. What I can do is move forward. My company? Well, it's doing better than I ever thought possible. We've expanded into new markets, hit targets I never thought we would, and most importantly, the culture is different now. The people around me aren't just employees. They're a team, a family, and I make sure of that. Every decision I make is grounded in transparency. Every conversation is about collaboration. There's no more room for the backroom deals and power plays that once plagued my company. And honestly, That's what I needed more than anything, a fresh start. Not just for the company, but for me. But here's where things get tricky. It's easy to focus on your career, to throw yourself into work and let that be your life. But at some point, you have to look at yourself and realize that there's more to life than just building something. There's more to life than surviving. I've been seeing Sarah more. We're taking things slow, as we both agreed. I'll be honest, there are times when I find myself holding back, wondering if I'm making the right decision by letting her into my life. It's not that I don't trust her. It's just that I don't trust me yet. I don't trust myself not to let the past creep in, not to get scared of how much I'm letting her in. But I'm trying. I'm making the effort. And you know what? I think that counts for something. I didn't expect to be here right now, actually considering the possibility of a future with someone. Hell, I didn't expect to be here at all, after what Justine did. But life has this way of moving forward whether we're ready for it or not. The trick is learning how to move with it. Sarah's been patient with me, understanding. I can see in her eyes that she's not looking to rush anything. She's not trying to push me into something I'm not ready for. That's the part that gets me. She's allowing me to be where I am, right here, right now. I think that's how it has to be. We both have baggage. We both have things we're working through. But it's real. And I'm starting to feel like maybe, just maybe, it's something worth pursuing. I'm also letting myself feel other things. Like joy. Like peace. I spent so much time after everything happened focused on surviving, on keeping the company alive, on protecting my empire. But in doing that, I forgot to live. I forgot what it felt like to enjoy the small moments, the walks in the park, the laughter with friends, the quiet mornings with a cup of coffee, the late-night talks that actually matter. I'm learning how to live again. To appreciate the things that make life worth living, even when it's messy and uncertain. I don't have all the answers, and maybe I never will. But I'm not afraid of it anymore. I'm learning to accept that life doesn't have to be perfect to be good. Justine? Well, I haven't heard from her in months. Not a peep. Part of me wonders if she's moved on or if she's out there still trying to salvage whatever's left of her reputation. Honestly, I don't care anymore. She doesn't have the power over me that she once did. And that's something I never thought I'd say. I won't pretend there weren't days where I questioned myself, where I wondered if I was doing the right thing, if I was strong enough to handle it all. But the truth is, the past is behind me. I can't change it. I can't erase the hurt, the betrayal, or the loss. But I can choose how I move forward. And that's the real victory. The company is thriving. My relationships are rebuilding. And most importantly, I am rebuilding. I'm not the man I was before all of this happened. Maybe I'm a little more cautious. Maybe I'm a little more guarded. But I'm also a little wiser. A little stronger. And I think that's enough. So here I am. Still standing. Still fighting. And finally, starting to feel like I'm in control of my own life again. And for the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid of what comes next. Whatever it is, I'm ready for it.